Hi, and welcome to Morning Coffee with Pisan Academy. I'm Deanna, and it's Halloween. I want to share with you a little bit about the origins of this fun, really great holiday. So about 2,000 years ago, the Celts, a people that lived in Ireland, the UK, and northern France, they would have a celebration right before their New Year. Now, like most other traditional civilizations, they would celebrate with the seasons and the harvest, and they would have holidays associated with them. And so November 1st was their new year, and it marked the start of this dark, gray, really cold, dark period. And living in the Pacific Northwest, I totally understand that because, yes, we get what they call the Great Dark. For months on end, it's just really gray and gloomy and really not a lot of sunshine, and it gets cold. So in order to prepare for the season that they often associated with death because of the cold, and that's when a lot of people would die, they would celebrate the evening before. And it's interesting because on Halloween, October 31st, for these Celtic people, they saw that there was this blurred line between the land of the living and the land of the dead. So on this day, October 31st, it was a celebration they called Samhain, and they thought that the ghosts would come back and they would wreak havoc and cause problems. And so they also believed that it was a time where the priests could predict the future. They would have this huge bonfire, and they would extinguish their fires in their own homes, their hearts. And so the only light, the only fire that they would have would be this huge sacred bonfire sort of in the middle of the village. And they would offer sacrifices to the Celtic gods. They believed that this was a way to kind of purify and help counteract all that havoc those ghosts were playing on the civilization. And then at the end of Samhain, they would take part of the fire and they would relight their own hearts. And that fire was meant to protect them for this horrible dark period and even throughout the rest of the year. And so the celebration about ghosts coming back and this blurred line between the living and the dead, dressing up in costume as the Celtics would do on this day to try to scare these ghosts off, this tradition got handed down to the Romans when the Romans took over this area. So when the Romans took over, they actually had two festivals that they celebrated in October. They had Feralia, which was a time when they would celebrate the dead. They also had a festival to celebrate the goddess Pomona, and associated with Pomona is the apple, and it's actually that tradition that we think of apples. Also, the apple harvest comes in, this time of year, but bobbing for apples, we believe, kind of is incorporated from that goddess Pomona. So when the Romans come in and take over that Celtic region, they combine Samhain with their own Roman festivals, and it becomes even a bigger festival. So how do we get to where Halloween becomes this huge industry in the United States? Well, in colonial America, we didn't really have a Halloween celebration. You didn't see the Puritans and the Pilgrims, or even anybody really celebrating this holiday until we get the Irish immigrants coming in the 19th century. And with them come the celebration of Halloween. And so they really start bringing in this tradition that has lasted through years and been evolved and changed over time through the Romans and then through Christianity in the Middle Ages, but they still had some of these traditions. They bring those to America, and that's when we start carving pumpkins and celebrating this day, October 31st, as this kind of blurred line between living and dead and ghosts and trying to ward off evil. So it hasn't always been an American holiday, but it is definitely one now. So how does trick-or-treating play into this? Borrowing from European traditions, Americans started to dress up in costume and then going and knocking on doors asking for food or money. And this eventually came into this tradition of trick-or-treating. Now, an interesting fact is that young women would dress up in costume that would try to maybe help predict who their future husbands would be. So there's a lot of these little traditions associated with these things that we now think of for Halloween that evolved over the centuries. In the late 1800s, there was an idea to promote Halloween as a sort of community and this festive event, and that flourished for quite a long time. And then at the turn of the last century, we start seeing both adults and children having a lot of Halloween parties. Over time, there came this sort of idea of taking away the witchcraft and the grotesque and the origins of the holiday, dating all the way back to the Celts. And so we've lost a lot of the original religious portions of the holiday, and now it's just a festive day to dress up and have a great time. As millions of dollars, maybe even more than that, is spent on Halloween decor and costumes and candy and parties, and it's just such a fun, festive day to dress up. And today we dress up as our heroes or maybe people who scare us, and it's just a day where we can be someone else and live in this fantasy world, which is absolutely amazing. So I hope you have a wonderful Halloween. If you like our videos, subscribe, like, share, hit the bell for notifications. Our links to social media are in the description below. Have a great Halloween and happy haunting.